Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of a very interesting, very unusual little knife, and that's this guy right here. This is the CRKT Homefront. First off, of course, I do want to thank my buddy Jim for sending this little guy along. It's a very cool knife. It's been on my radar forever. I never quite picked one up, but you know what? It's time. So thanks very much, and let's do a little size comparison here. This is not a huge knife, but it's also not tiny. Here it is next to your Spyderco Delica. So you can see you do have a whole lot more blade here. Right here is your Ontario rat number 2, and here's your rat number 1, which is pretty similar in terms of your overall blade shape, and frankly, style as well. Well, I don't know about that, but still, you know what I'm after here. Size-wise, it's right there. What else do we have right here? Chris Reeve knives, large Shabazz 21. Maybe a little bit different in terms of price and fit and finish. A lot different, but still. And, what the heck, ZT 452CF. A bigger knife, for sure. Next thing I want to highlight is that this is a Ken Onion design, and I know what you're thinking. Nick, you're putting me on here. That's a straight line, and these are straight lines too. It can't be Ken Onion, but indeed, it is. Take a look. Ken Onion. I joke. Ken Onion does a lot of organic, very curvy designs, but this is definitely him, and I think he's done a good job. We'll talk about that later. And then there is no disassembly video because it's going to be covered right in the middle of this review. So let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this particular very interesting pocket knife. Okay, so on the good side, first off, I gotta say, ergonomically speaking, the knife is good to go. And it's thoughtfully designed. I mean, you've got finger grooves here. You've got a nice finger guard on this flipper tab here. You've got lots of nice kind of contouring overall. I mean, there's a little bit of a downturn here for your thumb. I mean, Ken Onion does love his curvy designs, and this one is intelligently curvy. It's well done, and it fits my hand. The other thing I'll comment is that the the pocket clip is in a good position. Ergonomically, it fills the area of the hand that needs to be filled rather than providing an area of compression up top here. This is one of the reasons why Ken Onion is such a well-respected designer. He does these things generally right, so that's good. Next thing, this knife is heavily textured, both in terms of actual texturing, like over here and down here, and also in terms of contouring, and that means that this knife is a great knife for the Vaseline factory. This will not slip out of your hands in pretty much any condition, so that's good. Next thing, the swedge on the blade here actually brings me a little bit of joy. The reason there's not really a strong functional-ish reason for it or anything, but it really does make the blade a little bit more interesting. If it weren't there, the blade would run the risk of being very vanilla, but the choice to include that, I think, does work really well, and it makes the knife more attractive than I think it otherwise would have been. Clip on this guy is a nice deep carry clip. It's well positioned, like I said. Although the screw is in the path, it's very small, so I don't think it's going to be a problem. Overall, clip is good. Next thing, the action on it is fine. So this is not going to sound like high praise, but it actually is in light of the other things that they've had to do, namely this field strip system. The action on this guy is reliable. I'm not going to say it's a great action, because it isn't. The detent is just barely strong enough on this guy, but the thing is, it does deploy reliably, and, it does close pretty easily. I don't love the action, but at the same time, it's fine. It's good. It's okay. And, I think in light of everything they were doing here, to end up with an action that is fine, good, and okay is actually good. And so I don't want to sound like I'm damning it by faint praise here. That's something they must add to work at, so that's good. Then finally, on the good side, I do love the styling of this knife. It's sort of a World War II throwback sort of knife with the star, with these patterns. But the thing is, it's also not taking itself overly seriously. There is an element of sort of cartoonishness to it, particularly in the blade. For whatever reason, this sort of very, I don't know, there's an element of, I don't know, but I whatever it is, I love it. Because it is militaristic, it is tactical, but it's not in that played-out Call of Duty Special Ops, oh my god, weapon sense that everybody else has been playing with. And I really applaud Ken Onion for breaking the mold here, for creating a knife that is clearly military, but it's not what everybody else is doing. It's not this same tactical Molly vest sort of an affair everyone else is playing with. And I think it's a really smart design move to go out of left field here, to flaunt the trend of high-speed, low-drag tactical operations and make a military tactical knife that is just fun, frankly, and that I absolutely love and I absolutely respect. It's kind of out of what Ken Onion usually does. His range is, he does something very specific generally, but I love that he did it here, and I think it's one of the very best things about this knife. So to me, that's what's good here. Is the styling is great with the World War II throwback thing that's not taking itself too seriously. The action on it is surprisingly okay, given everything else. Nice deep carry clip, nice swedge. It's heavily textured, so it ain't going anywhere, and it's pretty much ergonomic. Let's talk about the grade here. Okay, what's great about this knife is actually what they call the field strip technology. Basically, CRKT has a history of trying crazy things, and I appreciate that. They do weird opening mechanisms, they do all sorts of other things that a lot of companies aren't going to touch. It's one of the very best things about the company, and I think the Homefront's another example of that, because they've made a knife here that is completely disassemblable and cleanable without having any tools at hand. I'm just using my hands here, and, well, I've just disassembled a knife, and that's a really cool idea. It's common that firearms are designed that way, for instance, but it's not terribly common in knife making. Usually you need Torx bits or even a flathead or something like that, and more importantly, it's well designed to be able to be taken apart in weird conditions, because it's very easy to do. I actually tried. I could do this one-handed. I didn't try for the review because I'm not that skilled, but still, so it's easy to do. They've done it in such a way that the knife isn't overly thick or anything like that. They're on a bunch of loose parts, and that's actually another big important thing here. None of these parts are detachable. The knife breaks down into 3 big chunks. I mean, sure, you can take off the back spacer if you undo this, but you can just dunk one of these pieces into a stream and swish it around, and it's going to be cleaner. And even to the extent that these washers do not actually come off. So you don't really have to worry about losing anything at all. Everything that needs to stay on the knife is captive to the knife. That's really great. Another thing I'm going to say, and I feel like I'm going to need a shower after I say this, is that, okay, get through this. Plastic and Teflon washes were the right choice here. Okay. I mean, but seriously, guys, pick your jaws up off the floor, because I think that they did make a great choice using a plastic and maybe a Teflon washer. Because, for a couple of reasons. First off, they were able to mold them in such a way that they simply do not come off here. Whereas with phosphor bronze, that would be much harder to do. In fact, I can't think of a way they'd be able to pull that off. But also, these plastic washers don't tend to want lubrication as much. I mean, you can run phosphor bronze dry, but these are a little bit more forgiving when run dry. And they're more forgiving overall. And so, the thing is, if you're taking this apart in the middle of nowhere and you're washing it off in a stream, you're not going to have a little bottle of oil to use to reassemble everything. So I do think that they made a great call by using Teflon washers there. Wow. All right. But anyways, so I love this field strip idea. I mean, the stop pin, by the way, is completely captive as well. Anyways, this is not something that I think 90% of the world is going to end up needing really at all. I think most people are going to be just fine waiting until you get home. And, you know, they're not often in positions where the works could be so easily gummed up. See, now it's back together and flips just like it used to. But the thing is, done properly, this isn't a bad thing. Like I said, it doesn't make the knife huge, cumbersome, thick. You don't need weird levers everywhere. I mean, this lever is actually pretty subtle. You can get to it when you need to, but it doesn't come up otherwise. And, you know, I like it. And this sort of a user maintenance considerate design, even if it's not to this full degree, even if you're just using one type of driver or something like that, is something I'd like to see a lot more of, and I think that makers should aspire to. And so to me, that is absolutely what's great about this knife, is not only is it made for disassembly and easy maintenance, but it's made so anybody can do it, and it's made so anyone can do it anywhere. That's a neat little thing, and I'm glad they tried it here, and I think by and large they did a great job of it. Unfortunately, they didn't do a great job of everything, so let's talk about the bad. Okay, on the bad side, first off, I am deeply bitter that this knife just made me endorse plastic or Teflon washers. That one's gonna burn for a little while, but that's okay. You gotta be honest, I guess. Anyways, moving along. Next thing, there is just too much writing on this blade. The CRKT logo, okay, fine, whatever. But then, Homefront, patent pending, Ken Onion design. Look, I get it. Plus, this little guy, I don't know. It just feels like there's a bunch of crap on here. Nitpick, not a big deal. Next thing, the fullers on the fuller here drives me nuts. This little cutout here, I mean, I can kind of see how it might go with the aesthetic, but fullers, practically speaking, and especially relatively deep and sharp fullers like this one, just serve to mix whatever you were cutting into yesterday with whatever you were cutting today. And I don't tend to love that. So I'd rather it not be there, but, okay, whatever, I guess. And it doesn't align with the grind here. Okay. Still nitpicky here. Less nitpicky, the back texturing here does not bring me a lot of joy. It's relatively sharp on the sides. You can see that these well, maybe you can see, but it's just sort of a flat edge along the side here, and so it's very grabby, which is great in the Vaseline factory, but for the rest of life, not a huge fan, especially given that as you've got this in your pocket, your hand is going to be rubbing past this every damn time. And as it's rubbing past it, it's hitting on this little guy right here, which is a very interesting species of pocket pecker. This very long tab is at least rounded off at some level, but the sides of it are still a little bit sharp, and it's pretty prominent. So I don't love the backside of the knife in that way with the texturing and the pocket pecker. Next thing on the bad side is that the steel on this guy is Aus 8. Aus 8 is a steel which is fine, I guess, in a knife that's under like 40 bucks or so. Unfortunately, this knife is way more than that, and so it just doesn't super perform. I mean, okay, it's easy to sharpen, which kind of fits the overall theme of you can maintain it yourself. But the thing is, I would much rather see something a little bit better at like 154 cm or something for this kind of a price. They don't need to be doing super steels, but Aus 8 really stings at this kind of a price point. Actually, the last bad thing is that kind of a price point. This knife is not a great value, to put it nicely. It's $100, $115, depending where you're looking. And that's really high. I don't know what their R&D costs or their production costs are to make this work. I mean, maybe it is justified in their minds. The thing is, the fact remains that you're paying $100 here for Aus 8 and aluminum handles with some serious fit and finish issues. And that's really not ideal. And I'm hoping that the price is able to come down as they streamline the process and as they recoup some of their R&D costs. But overall, if you look at every other knife that's available for $100 and you take off the field strip thing, this is way behind the pack. And that field strip thing is... it's great, but I'm not sure it's quite that great. But anyways, so that to me is what's bad about this knife, is that it's a pretty poor value. The steel is Aus 8. It's got a pocket pecker and a bit of a harsh texturing on the back of this here. The fuller drives me nuts. They put a little too much writing on the blade, and it made me endorse Teflon washers as being the right solution for something, which I am deeply, deeply bitter about. Let's talk about the ugly here. Okay, on the ugly side, three things. First off, the sharpening choil here is just brutally badly done, because they've made a fake sharpening choil. A sharpening choil in a perfect world, or frankly a sane world, a reasonable world, is a little gap behind the blade which allows you to fully sharpen the entire length of the blade. And this is, to compensate for the fact that some knives have most knives have an area where the flat part gives way to the grind, and so that allows there not to be a super thick area. This has a gap, but the thing is, the gap doesn't even touch the freaking plunge grind. It's not long enough out there, and it's not properly positioned. And so instead you have this long plunge grind area where there is just zero sharpening even attempted, and then the sharpening just abruptly stops right here. I just can't even. They could have extended this and solved the problem. They could have made a much quicker plunge grind and solve the problem. They could have even tried to sharpen at the wrist. They could have done a bunch of things to solve that problem, but no, it's just they're letting the flag of crappy choil fly, and that's so ugly. You're gonna bother to make a fake choil, make a real one. But okay, that's beside the point. Next thing. This guy has some unfortunately serious side-to-side blade play. I can understand that it would be hard to avoid that, given that the pivot tension is basically limited to what this little lever can apply. But I don't know. I still do wish that they'd been able to get that one right. Maybe there's a future iteration of this technology that's going to be able to eliminate that, maybe at least reduce it. But as it is, it feels very janky, and it's not something I'm in love with. Hopefully there's a way to get this sort of an idea to work without that. And then the final thing that I know they can get to work without that is the backspacer here. And I'll show you, because it's so damned easy to take this knife apart, and I just want to show that off one more time here. Oh, come on, you little bugger. Just got to turn that screw quite enough. There we go. Unfortunately, what we can see here, if we look at our little backspacer, is this region right here. And that region is where the blade hits the backspacer. Quite literally, if we put the blade on here, we can see that it's very straightforward for the blade right in this little region here to whack right into the backspacer. And that little bit of silver on that backspacer, that's steel from the blade. Little flat area on the blade as a result. That right there, the blade smacking into the backspacer, is one of my sort of unforgivable curses of knife making. There is just zero way that I can let that one slide, because it damages your cutting edge. It's just so damned ugly, I can't even see straight. And so no, bad, just bad. So to me, that's the ugly, is that the blade smacks into the backspacer because the stop pin is either weirdly positioned or has too much play. There's serious blade play on it, and the sharpening job and lack of choil here is just brutal. So let's go into the final conclusions. Look, this knife kind of checks every box that describes CRKT, good and bad. They're working with a major designer. The style is put front and center. They're doing something that's weird and honestly kind of delightful in the field strip thing. But they're also doing all of CRKT's sins here. They're using iffy materials. They're cutting all sorts of corners. And the fit and finish on it is seriously lacking. And so, I mean, it's pretty clear that this knife exemplifies all of CRKT's sins and all of its virtues. And that's really... that's a really, really mixed bag. And it leaves me feeling conflicted, because at some level I feel like I should just be trashing this knife. Because they're charging $100 plus for Os-8 steel with terrible sharpening, blade play, and a blade that smacks into the backspacer. That's simply not acceptable. I mean, CRKT's pattern is to take really nice designs and then do them cheaply and sell them cheap. But that approach only works if you're making the knife actually cheap. If you're making a knife cheaply for $100, it doesn't work out. I mean, it's usable, but there's just a lot of ugly here for a lot of money. But the thing is, at the same time, there is something kind of charming about this knife. Probably in large part, this is the styling, I will admit that. Without Ken Onion's touch on the styling here, and frankly the intelligence of the design, this might have been just a complete pile of crap. But I also do admit I love the idea of this quick disassembly. I mean, so many makers look at service, use a disassembly as a liability, or you might not want to do that. But the CRKT has put it front and center here, and they've made it really easy. So I applaud CRKT doing this, even if they're desperately underdoing it. And I don't know, this knife makes me feel a little bit snobbish, I'm going to be honest, because for a lot of people in the world, they wouldn't care about the blade play. Oh, God, that is bad. They wouldn't care about the blade play. They might not notice the knife smacking that there. They're used to crappy steels. So, you know, for a lot of people, this would be a great knife, and it is a pretty decent knife, I guess, but it leaves me desperately hoping that the Homefront 2 is in the works already. Maybe they'll drop the price to reflect the build quality, which would be a beautiful thing, or they'll raise the materials and the fit and finish to reflect the price. That would be fine too. Knowing CRKT's style, I don't think this is the case, but still, a man can dream. As for right now, as for this knife, if you find yourself as one of the rare few in need of the ability to clean your knife in the back of a moving truck with a bucket of water, and you're willing to make the compromises in fit and finish and price to get it, then look, this is basically your only option, and it's not so bad. This is a knife that will serve you well, given all those provisos. But the thing is, if you don't have a pressing need for this field strip idea, this knife is a really neat knife. It's a really neat idea, and I applaud him for doing it. But I do think that you're probably better served for waiting for this technology to trickle into a knife that's done just a little bit better than this one was. Real shame. I love so much. I hate so much. Alas, life sometimes breaks your heart. Anyways, hope this has been interesting, that all's well on the home front for you, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful and easy to disassemble rest of your day. Bye now.